I've put the shutter aside for now to continue with the shutter plate. The top ring is press fit. It can simply be removed like this. When putting it back, just make sure that one of the 4 notches aligns to this notch such that this screw can fit there. Yeah, they are very sticky. That's probably the reason why the shutter didn't run down on its own. Remember when I cocked it from this side? Now it's already fell out. I really believe that this piece is best working without any lubrication. Just maybe a little bit on the teeth of the gear. Next I remove this entire unit by removing 4 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I remove the gear for the self-closing aperture, and now finally that can be accomplished by unscrewing all of these 6 screws. Now what comes off now is this ring, then the gear for the self-closing aperture. Note that the orientation where to insert it does matter. And this ring is that the self-closing aperture only stops down to the pre-configured aperture. So by turning the aperture setting ring here, you can see a little pin here moving, and that pin sits inside this fork and moves this ring, and depending on where the end of this slide is, the aperture will only stop down to there. Yeah, that's how the automatic aperture works in this model. Okay, so finally I think I will also remove the other gears just for completeness. This gear connects the tensioning of the body to the tensioning of the shutter. It's also a bit not completely free moving. This gear here has a spring underneath it that will be tensioned by this notched disc here, and the tension will then automatically close down the aperture. So yeah, just for completeness I will take out those 2. Also maybe remove this anchor for the retard mechanism of the running down of the shutter. By the way, this gear rounds down. Once you fire the shutter, it runs down from this state to around this state, and the retard mechanism is just so that it doesn't run down too fast, so that the mirror and the light flap have enough time to flip up and make the way free to the film for the light. But a too slow Aperture, of course, is also annoying. So the delay between pushing the shutter release button and actually taking the picture would be too big. Okay, I'm done now with cleaning all of these parts. So next come these 3 parts back on. But first I clean them very well. This moves very easily now. Very good. Okay, that's it for the shutter plate, I think. Now that I loosened this screw a little bit, this aperture tension spring can be turned. So the entire aperture ring can be turned without making any tension. And I want to do that because when I insert the shutter unit into the shutter plate, I need to take care for the lever of the aperture to go into this slot here. So there's a couple of things to keep in mind when doing that. First of all, this ring should be turned counterclockwise until the end. This lever will engage this tensioning lever. So this must go to the right of this, such that it is tensioned this way and released this way. I also like to apply a little bit of lubrication to this thing because it will engage the push button for the shutter release and it will slide over it. And this way it just slides a bit easier. To check how it works, I use this gear and I can just turn it with my fingers. It shouldn't be too difficult. So let's check first. And this should be the B setting, the bulb mode. And then I release it. Yeah, very good. Now let's also check time, like 1 second. This doesn't work. Now it works. Why didn't it work earlier? So it seems like this push button isn't pushed in far enough to release the shutter. This is weird. So I need to investigate a little bit into this problem. It turned out that the guilty piece was the shutter release button. I have no idea how this happened, but if you look carefully, here you can see two of the same shutter release buttons. This one was in the shutter. This one I took from a broken Contaflex as a replacement. And this arm here is bent on this piece a little bit outwards, unlike on this piece where it is very straight. So I think that this could be repaired by bending this back, but as I have this replacement part anyways, I will just use this for now. So before I replaced that part, it seemed to work only sometimes. Now with the good part, it always works. So the next thing to do is to adjust the aperture. The first thing is set it to f22, and now this screws already loosen it, and I can turn the disc and hopefully the aperture will close there. Now it's at f22, and now I will need to tension the aperture spring. And as the repair or service manual by Zeiss Ikon says, for this version of the Contaflex it's exactly 20 notches, and I don't think that tensioning it more than 20 notches really does anything more to it. If the aperture is still too slow, then it's not because there's not enough tension, but it's because something in the mechanism is not moving as easily as it could, and there's something that causes friction. So to do this, I use one screwdriver as a securing and one screwdriver for tensioning. So let's start in this position. While doing that, be careful that the centered screw does not unscrew entirely. Then tighten the centered screw and secure it with the securing screw. And now check that it works. So with tensioning the shutter, it should also fully open the aperture. Like so. Then closes the aperture and fires the shutter. It cannot already be said that it is fast enough. To test that, I would need to set it to the fastest speed, and also I need the entire mechanism to be installed with the camera body. So for that I will check later. But now is also a good opportunity to clean the rear lens element from the back side and also from the front side while the shutter is opened.